Hello and welcome to Bridge of Insight. Today we're going to do a pick a card about past lives. So we're going to take a moment and look at the piles in front of you. The first pile is a fairy stone, the second pile is amethyst, and the last pile is rose quartz. If you like to, we'll do a moment for meditation. If not, feel free to skip to the pile of your choice. This is a general reading for fun, so please take what resonates for you and leave the rest behind. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and hold for a moment. Now breathe out. Quiet the mind and let everything go. Take another deep breath in. Hold. And out. No thoughts, just feel. Take one last deep breath in, hold, and breathe out. Now open your eyes. Which pile are you drawn to? Welcome to your reading pile number 1. Now the first set of cards here that we have She Who Changes, She Who Hesitates, She Who Surrenders, and She Who Knows. Now what I find interesting here is that sandwiched in between She Who Hesitates and She Who Surrenders is She Who Changes and She Who Knows. Now these two outer cards talk to me about the person that you were. You were very insightful, intuitive, intelligent. But you had to hide it, which I find very interesting. The second card, She Who Hesitates, in the imagery we have a young girl who's kind of acting shy, but in her shadow she's playing the violin. And beside her we have She Who Surrenders, and the description of that card is chains and bondage. So whoever you were in this life, you were restricted in some way. Whether it be your gender, how much money you had or didn't have, the resources that were available to you. For some reason in this lifetime, you had to hide who you were, or hide your intelligence, or hide the power that you had. And when we look at these other cards, and we'll get to it in a moment, it reads very much so that you were very smart. You were very analytical, scientific. Now, I would say it leans towards astrology, mathematics, chemistry, like that type of intelligence. You were very good at it. Maybe you could have very well been very young for your age and people didn't take it seriously. You could have been a woman and people didn't want to hear about it from you, or you shouldn't know that. There are a lot of different situations that this could be about, but I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that you were in this lifetime a bird in a cage. Now, beside these first 4 cards, the past life cards that come up for you are unrequited love and ships. Now, if you were a woman in this lifetime, and again, you could be a man listening to this now, and you could have been a woman in this past life. You could be anything. Gender is fluid. This is talking more about the energy. But what this reads to me as, and what I feel with this energy, is that you were in a position I would imagine you were a woman who was married off, whether you wanted to or not, but it was in a loveless relationship. Perhaps you thought, or your family thought, that if you married this person, you'll have a better place in society. You'll have more money. The family will get a better status. And whatever the situation was, you had to travel for it. With the Ships card, and the third card in your tarot deck in the second row here is the High Priestess card. And in this image, we have a stormy sea. And this is about misdirection. So whatever came into your life, marriage, partnership, whatever the situation was in this lifetime, you or the people around you thought it was going to be a good idea, and it wasn't. I think it actually made things worse. Now, the first two tarot cards that you have are about science and education. And this is where that energy and that idea of you being a very smart person comes from. The maze to me in the second tarot card feels like your brain, but in a good way. Like, you liked a challenge. You liked trying to figure things out and trying to put pieces together. And what is interesting that came through for you is that it feels very much like you were the type of person, whether you were a man or a woman. Let's say you went off to be an intern for some chemist or some mathematician or astrologer or something. It's the type of energy where they would do something like write a problem on a board, and when they would turn their back, you would either fix it or know the answer, but you didn't get credit for it. That's the kind of energy that comes through. And besides this High Priestess card, we have the Hermit. And in this particular deck, it talks about chasing a goal, chasing a challenge. And beside that is falling into foolish pettiness stuff. It's not the Fool card. It is a Fool card. And this brings me back to the idea that what you thought was going to be good for you, what you thought was going to encourage your knowledge, didn't. And the last card you have here, the Oracle card, the Comet card, is a very unusual card. It is a giant yellow monkey holding a girl by the neck. It all goes back into that same idea that you were restricted. Or perhaps you started out not restricted, but you didn't have the status. And then you took this offer, and then everything became way more restricted than it did before. And what I connect this to as well is in the Elena card. The energy that I get off of her in this particular reading is almost like the wife of a successful family who sees and knows everything, but doesn't necessarily do anything about it, or she does, but behind the scenes. Now, the Oracle cards that came out for you are the Healer, the Offering. We're going to try this again because apparently I need more water. The Oracle cards that came out for you, I'm sorry, not the Oracle cards, the Archetype cards that came out for you are the Healer, the Offering, the Animal, and the Orphan. So I'm going to start with the orphan for a sec real quick. And this is going back to that what we were talking about for the energy that whatever your status was, you could have easily been an orphan. Like, there's no doubt that you were not in a good position when you started. And the healer talks to me about medicine, right? So this idea of chemistry, alchemy, perhaps that was what you were very knowledgeable about. In the offering, like we mentioned before, someone came in with a proposal or an idea and it seemed really good, but it really was not. And with the animal card talks about she-wolf energy. And that is what you had. Whether you were a male or a female, it doesn't matter. It's this inner power, this strong inner power, this inner knowledge that you had that someone, something, some circumstance took away from you. Whether it was society, marriage, whatever it was taken away from you. Now, I hope that's not the case for the lifetime you are currently in. Perhaps you need to heal that part of your soul in this lifetime. And I am truly sorry you had to go through that, if it does resonate with you. But you were a powerhouse, and definitely before your time. Well, I hope you enjoyed that reading, pile number 1, and I'll see you soon. Welcome to your reading, pile number 2. Now, before we dive into the cards, I just have to mention, when I was shuffling your cards, I got a message in my head, which does not happen often, but it happened. And at first, I was a little hesitant to mention it, because to some people it might be a little bit hooey, but it's something, especially after seeing all the cards that came out for you, it's something that I have to say. So if it resonates for you, take it. If it doesn't, leave it. The message that came out for you, the message I got in my head, was among the stars. So if you're connected to your starseed energy, and as I go through the cards, and maybe even as you can see, it connects very much so with your cards. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. So we begin your reading with the she who resists, she who persists, and she who guides. Now, whoever you were in this past life, you were a fighter. You were a leader. You were strong-willed. And what I get from these cards is you were someone who could see something coming from a mile away. You were aware of what was happening around you, but it's almost like you could see war or violence or something bad coming before it showed up. which I find very interesting. It's very interesting because when we look at the tarot cards that came up for you, they tell a very similar story to that energy. They talk about vigilance, watchfulness, leadership, communication, and observation. Now, those are just the first 4 cards here. So you were someone who was, again, very aware of what was happening. And what I picked up on was what this overall reading feels like to me is like, I'm going to try to explain it the best way I can. Like, if you were a community leader and you had a meeting with the other community leaders and you guys all talked about the stuff that was coming, the stuff that the individual communities didn't know about. That's what it feels like. It feels like you were in the know about stuff and you were fighting for your community, keeping them safe, keeping them protected, right? And what I like about this 4th card here is a woman looking up at the stars and opening a cage and letting them out, letting all the birds go. And we'll talk about that again in a minute. But I want to go to the card next to it. We have a fox biting the goose's neck. And beside that we have the sea monster, which represents fear and self-doubt, which I find very interesting that they landed under the phobias card. So someone in this past life either lied to you or portrayed you, or maybe they led you to believe, oh, everything's fine. Everything's totally fine. But it wasn't. And that could be affecting you in this lifetime. Maybe you have trust issues of some kind. That stems from this. And beside the phobia card is the karmic relationship card. So whoever this person was in your past life, they are in your current life. And they were probably in other past lives as well. This is something that you are meant to heal in this life. Now I want to jump back again to this tarot card with the woman releasing the birds. Going back to that idea of people making you believe that everything was okay, but it wasn't. You knew it wasn't okay. You knew whatever decision was made, whatever was happening, it was going to unleash a lot of chaos. And that's why in the card with the woman and the birds, and in your last card with this little dude flying in the sky with some goats, what that speaks to me about is that you, even though you might have been afraid, you are not going to let whatever was going on affect your community, affect the people you cared about, affect the people you love. Underneath that, we have the Mars card and we have the Galaxy card. So again, it's this idea of if it resonates with you, if this resonates with your starseed, this stuff was happening somewhere else. There was war, there was famine, something happened. Could have also happened on Earth. It's totally plausible. Something happened, and you got your people to safety. You were the leader who made sure that no matter what, you and your people, your community, you were going to survive. Even if that means going somewhere else. And with this Egypt card up top here, what this talks to me about, if you were in another galaxy, planet, universe, what have you, you came to Egypt, which, as we know in mythology and legend, there are stories of that. But if this is you on Earth, and you had to get your community, your village, out of a situation, it feels to me like you were in Egypt and you left Egypt. I don't think you were somewhere else and went to Egypt. Now, the archetype cards that came out for you were very interesting and very reminiscent of everything we talked about. You have the Judge, which is obviously a person who stands for justice and making decisions. So this goes back to, again, you were somebody who was not going to stand by and let bad things happen to good people. Then we have the Empty Room card, which again has this galaxy idea of it. But what this talks to me about is wherever, regardless of this is starseed energy, regardless of this is earth energy, there was nothing left. Wherever you were from, wherever you came from to get to safety, there was going to be nothing left. And with the Forest card next to it, what's interesting about this card is that the forest is about facing the unknown. Going into the forest knowing that there's shadows, that there's things you can't see. And so if you do identify this as star energy, you had to lead people, regardless of if it was star energy or not, you had to lead people to somewhere you didn't know. They didn't know it, you didn't know it. But it didn't matter because there was nothing left. It could have very easily been there was famine. There was war. There were no resources. Whatever it was, there was nothing left. And you were not going to let that happen. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you again. Pile number 3, welcome to your reading. Now, yours is probably the simplest reading that we've had, but also a very beautiful reading. We start with the she who becomes, she who battles, and she who calms. Now, in this lifetime, this talks to me about somebody who transcends, perhaps in battle. What it feels like to me is that perhaps you were put in a situation where there was a war, and you started off very simply as a soldier, but you very quickly rose to a higher ranking in that situation. And it's because of this calm energy, this honest energy that you had, that put you in that position. You were trustworthy. You were loyal. And what I like about this reading is that underneath the She Who Battles card here, the first tarot card you have talks about loved ones, family matters. So your whole reading, and I'll get to it and explain the rest of the cards, but your whole reading is about going to battle to protect what you love, the things you love, the simple life you love. Your past life cards that came out were the Farm card, Atlantis, and Vows. Now, normally when I first saw Atlantis, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe they were part of the city that was Atlantis, the myth that was Atlantis. That's not what came through. What came through was almost the idea of the Atlanteans being very protective of Atlantis, keeping the beauty and the purity of Atlantis, protecting the animals, protecting the sea life. That's what was coming through. So when we have the Farm card, and what's interesting about the Farm card here is that underneath your second tarot card, it talks about humble beginnings. And besides that is the Virgo card, which talks to me about the simple things in life. And even the woman in the picture, she looks like she's a florist and she's holding barley or wheat, admiring the beauty and what that's going to do for people, how that's going to provide for you, how that's going to provide for your village, your town, what have you. So it's this energy, this farm energy, this humble beginnings energy. You had this beautiful sanctuary, this beautiful, simple life. The people you cared about, the people you loved. And you wanted to protect that. You wanted to protect that. And you were going to do anything to keep that sanctuary safe. When we have the Vows card here, and we actually underneath them, not directly underneath them, but underneath them we have these trapeze artists. This talks about loyalty. The loyalty, the devotion you had was so deep and so caring. And that's the type of energy that propelled you in the battlefield. Whether that's what you held on to get you going, or that's the type of energy you brought to the people you were leading. Now for your archetype cards. Two of these cards did come out in pile number 1. So there might be a message for you in pile number 1 if you want to check that out after. But we have the Healer, the Shadow, and the Offering. Now, like we said before, with the Healer, you could have been growing medicinal herbs. You could have had knowledge about herbs that were healing for people around you. Even the food that you grew, the animals that you raised, taking care of them and then selling them, giving them away, having them for your family, You were healing people. You were giving them the nutrients, the nourishment that they needed. And then we have the shadow card. And what I found very interesting, what it talked to me about was, in the healer card, you have these beautiful bright colors. And then you have the shadow card. And when I saw this, and then saw the offering beside it, it all kind of just made sense. You had this bright, beautiful life, then a shadow comes. Perhaps it was a looming war, or there was something threatening the beauty in your life. And in the offering, we have a hand reaching out in darkness to the beautiful watercolors of this card. This tells me that the offering was your opportunity to protect your family, to keep that pristine life that you had, the beautiful life you had, the bountiful life you had. Maybe you didn't want to, but the loyalty you had and the protectiveness you had, there was no other choice. You were not going to let this thing, this person, take away from the simple lifestyle that brought you so much fulfillment, so much abundance. There was no other option for you. There really wasn't. Now, if you made it back from this shadow, I don't know. But you were loyal to your word, and you protected what you loved. It's a very beautiful story. Well, pile number 3, I hope you enjoyed that. And I'll see you soon.